Hola community, welcome to Blender Today Live 232. We're streaming again back from the Blender studio after a 2-week break, which was supposed to be only 1 week. I wasn't here. I was here in the Netherlands. I went for the very first time to Asia and to China, to Beijing, for a workshop that actually could extend it a bit longer than expected, but it was amazing because I met people from the Blender community, China, Blender Magic community, and I can talk more about that towards the end of the show as a goodbye. But it was really eye-opening, like just how in such a place so different everybody still uses Blender and the impact that Blender has. It's amazing. I'm gonna talk about it later. Let's continue. Other than that, announcements this week. There is some big announcements in the minimum requirement changes in Blender. Keep an eye on that. I'm gonna mention this in a bit. There is a slight delay. Oh, I'll try to fix it. There has been 2 blog posts on the code blog this week. One of them is, let's see if this fixes it. One of them, it's in the animation workshop. This one is a quite lengthy one by Sibren and the rest of the animation module team. They had a workshop 2 weeks ago, the week that when I was doing the live stream. There's also an companion video that sums it up, but also, yeah, you can read about what is the future of the animation system, more or less, and more or less the timeline also. This is not something that is gonna happen in just the one release, like bam, at once. If you go all the way down to the timeline, you see that this is something long term. This is like Blender 5.0 for making the switch, and we are not even in 4.0 yet. So yeah, is the audio delay better or worse? Okay, I made it worse. Okay. Other than that, there is the video is behind. Okay, let me try to fix it, because there is this feature here that allows you to change the offset. Let's see, hopefully it's better. Other than that, the animation workshop, there is another blog post about the lessons from the animation workshop, which maybe apply to you if you're running this kind of workshops in other open source projects or in similar projects. So this one I haven't read yet because it's recent-ish. And that's it. I think we are ready to move into what is new in Blender today. And my voice is broken because it was 38 degrees in Beijing and the airplane was very cold. So I hope I didn't pick anything else, but oh geez. Sorry for the blinding. Let me fix that. Dark reader, please work on this site, on site list, this one. So no, I don't think it's going, because it's not. All right, let's fix it everywhere. Let's change it everywhere. It doesn't work for local files. Oh, I need to donate. Click the search. No, it doesn't allow me. Okay, well, sorry, but your eyes will be a bit blinded. There are a few changes, like about 500 commits since the last time we checked. I made a blog post on the Blender community with the full list of all the changes that have been made during the last few weeks. Most of them, there is cleanups, there is fixes, there is EV next, there is workbench next, there is everything next. A lot of Blender has been moved into C++, like there's been like a marathon, I think. And so much so that I was checking here the code in blender.org, the projects of blender.org, and 67% is C++, only 17% is left in C. It's crazy. This will speed up a lot of development, and hopefully it will be more inviting for other developers to join. Okay, let's see what's new in Blender. Well, let's start with the, maybe I don't need to blind you every time I'm checking what is new. Animation. So this list, by the way, it's a bit long, so I'm gonna skip some of the changes, and I'm gonna try to focus on the ones that have more impact, or they change the workflows or requirements. Again, hint. So animation, F curve channel color band alignment. Color band alignment on F curve channels broke after additional offset, which is added by I think it just has to do with the move the NLA solo to the right on this was changed a while ago. Actually, the solo button was moved to one to each one of the channels to the right, and apparently the line was offset. Two operators have been related to animation, having merged. The push and relax rest post operation have been merged into one, and the operator now has a default range of -1 to 1 with a default of 0. So instead of having two operators for which is basically the same operation, just the opposite, now there is only one. So you think if I change my audio to 350, it's gonna fix my delay? Hope. The other change, vertically locking. Oh, the NLA. So ever notice how in the NLA you can scroll to infinity, basically, even if you don't, when you don't have any channels, you can scroll. Not anymore. It will lock the NLA so it doesn't scroll to infinity. Nice. Butterworth smoothing filter. What is this? Implements the Butterworth filter for smoothing F curves. So this filter, apparently, according to Wikipedia, it's a type of filter that tries to actually, I think there are some videos here, some demo videos that tries to remove the small variations on a curve but keep the overall shape. So sort of like the smooth corrective or smooth Laplacian in a mesh modifiers, and it should be similar to that. There is a video here, I think. This one, but I think this is mainly for motion capture, where you have a lot of winkling or twinkling or minimal movement, or when you have your camera and you want to record the movement of the camera, for example, and there is some jittering because you had too much coffee, this should fix it. Yay, nice. All right. The next what I'm not sure about is it's the name of the filter. Does it make sense to expose it as the operator itself? Because you should search for, I don't know, how is it in other software? Is it the name exposed? Because if in the future there would be other algorithms to smooth a curve, maybe it's just better to have it as an option on the operator, or maybe smooth corrective or smooth. It's already weird that in Blender we have 3 modifiers for smoothing, right? Smooth, some corrective, some Laplacian, and when they all could be one node with 3 modes, actually, and they even look different. I think that I will make a task for this, because some have the axis first, some have second. The repeat is sometimes third, second, or at the top, actually. And this UI could be unified. Hey, this is a nice nice first issue for someone that wants to get into Blender development. Fixing this UI is just literally cutting and pasting code in order. It shouldn't be too difficult, but just to make it unified. This should be lambda factor and border as part of one, instead of having the word repeat twice. Fixing this wouldn't take long. Maybe half an hour. Done. Need to compile Blender, but small detail. Okay, next, you know what is not a small detail? The vertex weight edit modifier was not inclusive. And we're not talking about some woke modifier here. We're talking about the vertex weight edit modifier, which was reported in an issue that there was no way to have the modifier. There was a bug report some time ago, like 3 years ago, about the vertex weight edit and how some people use this UI. Crazy. I actually seen people in the workshop that I was giving in China, and they were using the Blender white theme, I guess for higher contrast, but it was like, wow. It was during the day in the workshop. So so yeah, there was no way that you could add a modifier and it would be including the weight that is already existing in the modifier. So now it is, because the weight paint vertex weight edit modifier is inclusive. There's some examples here as well. Next, allows setting the slider unit and mode split off from the Butterworth smoothing filter. So this patch allows the slider, which slider, to take a different string than just percentage. The use case is on the smoothing filter, where we want to display hertz instead. Additionally, the slider got the ability to set the modes which determine how the factor number is displayed. Slider mode percent, but what is it? It has to do with animation. This is not a slider mode set, slider unit string size. I think it is a user interface thing, not related to a, right? Because it's a slider widget. Yeah, but is made by Chris, which is from the animation module. But I think this should be named with a different, is outside of the module. That's being nitpicky here, sorry. Next, improved drawing of locked F curves. So locked F curves, so when you can't move them, have two issues. One, the dashing is so short it just creates visual noise. Keyframes are drawn in white, looking like they're selected. And this PR changes, so increases the dash width. The keyframes are drawn in black on locked curves. To indicate that they can't be selected, draw them in an X shape. What? No, add an X shape. I think just disabled will be enough, not an X. X is something else. X is like a button, like something you can click, a window you can close. The X axis. No, X is, that means something else. To further reduce visual noise, locked curves no longer draw thicker than when selected. That's nice. Yeah, actually the dashed was terrible. It was like dotted instead of dashed. I disagree with the X though. What do you people think? Next, set hard minimum and maximum for the frame start and the end of an action. Currently, the start and end of a property of action doesn't have a hard minimum and maximum. This results in an error when exporting the action having extreme range values in FBX and GLTF. Wow, okay, so we didn't have a hard minimum and maximum. We could do set to anything. Interesting. Cool, they should fix FBX and GLTF exports. What else? Then that was letter A. We just started with the A. B for BLI. BLI is it's a utility. There are utilities inside of Blender, but this one has a optimization, and this is the best kind of optimizations when they happen on libraries or utilities in Blender, because pretty much every corner of Blender will benefit. In this case, counting in an array, like counting, you can count for anything. And in this case, this has been optimized, which means, for example, when building offsets for mesh topology maps, or to count the number of the connected elements, and in some users are geometry nodes, the subdivision draw cache, and mesh to cover conversions, like parts of Blender that are not even that related to each other from a user point of view. And this is now much faster. How much faster? About, well, an improvement, for example, from 10 milliseconds to 3 milliseconds. most likely makes accounting less efficient, but it is quite a nice performance improvement. In some cases though, this is because it's just using multi-threading. When the thread amount of threads is less than 4, it's actually slower, much slower. So there is a check to check if you have if your computer will benefit of this. Or let me get into here. Hello everyone. Much more quiet when I get the headphones on. Next, blend. Oh, yeah, this one I left it in because it's a huge. It's Blender kernel. It's like part of the yeah, Blender or kernel. Move to C++. The next, compositor. C for compositor. They use the average color variance in the Kuwahara node. This patch uses the average variance on individual color channels as a condition for choosing the appropriate quadrant. This will produce different visual results, but the node hasn't been released yet, like in an official release. So make sure that you're not rendering a film halfway with Blender Alpha, which I wouldn't recommend, but it could happen. Next, let's see. Let me have a drink of mate. Okay. This is done to be compatible with the GPU implementation, which uses that method due to superior performance and memory saving. Next. Curves. Reimplement random selection with the mask. Instead of manipulating the selection attribute directly, we get an index mask of random elements and then apply the changes to the selection attribute in the operator. Next, remove transmission roughness from principal BSDF. So we're talking about cycles already. There's a bunch of changes that are more, some of them are internal. I couldn't filter or clean the list of every change, so maybe some of them are not really relevant for us today, but let's see. So transmission roughness has been removed from the principal BSDF. This was already unsupported in combination with the multi-scattering GGX, and it prevented the principal BSDF from using the micro phase-based Fresnel or glass materials, and will have made future improvements even trickier. Let me see if I can disable the reactions while doing the live stream, because someone is spamming it and it gets a bit distracting. Well, I mean, someone is adding this emoji constantly since for the last 10 minutes. Let me minimize, sorry. So if I don't read the chat now, you know why. I don't think you can disable the reactions after your live, fortunately. No. Okay, next. So yeah, it was added, I guess. I want to see how it looks now without this, because the should be shorter. Yeah, slightly shorter transmission. There is no roughness. I'm all for shorter nodes. And actually, there's another change this week that makes nodes in the compositor and in other parts smaller or shorter, more compact. Next, this is a fix. Not accounting for closure Fresnel. This is for the caustic exchange that was added some releases ago. So this should be a fix for that. Add texture to sunlight. What does it mean? Using area preserving mapping from cone to disk, a somewhat distortion near the 90-degree angle. The texture rotates with the transformation of the light object, can have negative and non-uniform scaling. So you can have now textures on a sunlight. What? Nice. Ah, this is developer art. What? Nice. Celebration emoji. Awesome, Wyson. Fantastic. Textures in sunlight. I would have named that the live stream. Well, no. Today we have a big name for the live stream. Next, change the sun lamp to have uniform intensity at high angles. Wow, I didn't know it would differ the intensity at different angles. That's a big flaw of a light that is called sun. Like, sun is something very overall really but this is how it used to be, this is how it's gonna be. Okay, renders are gonna look really different now. But yeah, the sun is very constant, right? You trust the intensity and the shadows to be parallel and constant. So apparently that wasn't the case. Nice. And with the new basic sampling is slightly faster. Nice. Replace the spotlight disk sampling with sphere sampling. This is probably similar to what we had before. Let's see if we have some. Ooh. Okay, so apparently some change in the sampling makes it much less noisy. What? And they can now have a texture. So this is part of maybe the change that I mentioned before. The texture support was split into 3 commits. This is, I'm reading the list from newest to oldest. So this is probably related to that, but awesome. And the spotlight can now project textures using UV coordinates. That's so cool. Spotlight's disk sampling with sphere sampling. So much faster. Oh yeah, there was a change on this in 3.6, right? Or 3.5. Awesome. Let's continue. So fix out of bound issues during Embry VAVH building. Okay, this is one of the commits that I should probably have skipped because it is a fix, not hugely relevant. Next. I mean, it is relevant. Every fix is relevant, but gotta keep things short. Embry, resolve padding related issues with during buffer creation. Another one. This is a fix for metal, so Apple related fix that will make it spawn more compilation threads if available, so it should improve performance if they are available. Improve one API requirements in the user interface. So the requirements list was assuming it was 1.101 and now it's just changing the text, so it's a bit more clear what is the version of your Intel drivers that you need. Remove point density texture support for surfaces. This actually was never really worked, and it was only intended for volumes, right? Point density, it was only for volumes. And apparently this was also impacting the rendering of soft surface kernels in the GPU. So good to see it removed. One API wasn't working on Windows, now it's working in, so the one API, the Intel API for rendering and cycles. Next, cycles Hydra. Set the background color depending if there are lights. So there is some light when there are no lights in the scene, and black when there are lights. This matches the behavior on other Hydra renderers. Let's talk about... Wait, I haven't used the Eevee. So, Eevee. What is new in Eevee? The sunlight factor now matches cycles. Apparently there was a bug report, fixed wrong conversion between power and radiance of emitters. Some fancy functions over here. I didn't know Gitia could display this kind of functions, but it can, and it really well, apparently. So yeah, the sunlight factor now matches between cycles and Eevee. Okay, Eevee next has a ton of changes. Like metal changes, hair and curves support, point clouds support, Fresnel functions are back. Then reflective light baking and reflection probe packing as well. So the team has been hard at work. Jeroen, Clement, Miguel, Jason, everybody hard at work to get Eevee Next here. Next, we're moving into Ghost, or the like part of the core of Blender. This I never talk about it, and the Ghost commits I usually skip, but they have to do with like the core parts of Blender. These, for example, Mac OpenGL support has been removed. Now it only requires the maximum OpenGL version for supported for Mac doesn't meet the minimum required version anymore. And this makes for a big cleanup in the case of Mac, and it leads up the way for new changes, new platforms. The with OpenGL option now has been renamed to with OpenGL backend because it's different. And this is the big change, and I'm going to go full screen so you can, if you have this on the side of your desk, you can pay attention to this one, because as of last week, Blender 4.0 requires OpenGL 4.3 instead of 3.3 as the minimum requirement. What does it mean? If you have a computer from the last 10 years, especially if you have like a AMD or NVIDIA graphics card, you're not gonna notice any difference, because I think if you look for like something old like NVIDIA GeForce 400 series, for example, this is a series of 13 years old, right? 13 years old from 2010, and this one already supports OpenGL 4.6. So we're not talking like really high, like bleeding edge hardware here. It has to do more with the drivers that your computer has and the operating system that you have. So make sure you check that your graphics card supports it. Otherwise, you're always going to have Blender 3.6, and it's gonna get fixes for 2 more years. But yeah, it has to think, progress. It's a cost of progress. I asked actually Clement about this. It's like, okay, so we are bumping the version. Now you need OpenGL 4.3. Why? What does it bring to the table? And after a long answer, the summary was performance. So performance everywhere. How? Is it for Eevee? Well, not only for Eevee, it's also for the workbench. There is together with Eevee Next, there is also Grease Pencil Next, there is also Overlay Next, and there is a Workbench Next. So Workbench, the thing that you use for everything, will get performance improvements. For example, backface culling. So you can, like, you use the Workbench is something you use for everything. You use it for sculpting, for example. So if sculpting could use backface culling, only rendering what you have, it means that it could support many more polygons on screen, and overall better performance. So yay for that. And also 13 years ago, it's not too bad. It's not too bad. It's not like we're limiting only to like 3 years old, 5 years old hardware. Okay, so next, let's see. GPV3. Okay, the list for Grease Pencil 3.0 is huge. So Folk, Amelie, Casey Bianco, Julian, Patrick, Sitze Brouwer, and I bet Antonio also, and other developers are working really hard on getting Grease Pencil 3.0 in shape. Some things are more basic, like draw the paint cursor. Some things are more advanced, like getting the dope sheet support added, which I think it still doesn't support everything. Like let's see, let's do animation. Okay, I found a quick way to close Blender. But yeah, it supports for layers. I don't know if layer groups, but layers it does. Let's maybe check. Although if it's broken, maybe I shouldn't be. Let's see. Do I have Grease Pencil 3.0 enabled? Yes. So if I go to the dope sheet, Shift F12, then I should see the layers. Sorry, Grease Pencil. There you go. Nice. So if I add a new group, and actually this is a good way, I can drag and drop now. Okay, they're not there yet. But can I sort now? Yeah. Nice. Is this reflected here? Yes, it is. Nice. Cool. So yeah, there is a few changes this week. Oof. Well, there's a few changes and some fixes to do here, but I don't know if you noticed, there is now a tree list here with an indicator for the depth, which apparently is probably not following the zoom. Really getting off. Interesting. Okay. Yes. So even next, ton of changes. Let's go into geometry nodes. The geometry nodes team has also been hard at work, so much so that, for example, performance improvements. Build a new quad poly offsets in parallel. Add an offset indices utility to fill constant sized new offsets in parallel, which was already done in the duplicate elements node. How much faster? Well, about 10 times faster. In the extrude node, this was single threaded. So now the extrude node in this case would be about 10 times faster. Amazing. Awesome. More performance improvement. The blur node face domain performance. Slight speed up on face topology building for the blur node. Avoid using increment and replacing by adding size. Multi-threading for accumulating offsets. The node became 36% faster on a test with a large grid, with 13 out of 14 milliseconds saved on the topology building. What other change? Small change. The assets loading. There was a message when the assets were loading, and there was a warning in the 3D view header, which was a bit more confusing than it was helping. I think the issue was that it was just a lot of text, like loading asset libraries. It will flash for a moment. I think if we use something smaller, like the new progress bar indicator, small progress bar indicator, maybe that would help. But yeah, for the time being, this has been removed because it's just too much text that it will flash and it will make it nice. But there should be an indicator that things are loading, especially when you work with assets that maybe are coming from the web in the future, or from a server, a local server. Okay. What is this? Add runtime data to geometry nodes modifier. This is probably something internal. Single runtime field and move disking. Yes, internal change. Avoid copying geometry copies in no cache simulation. So when you're running it in like real-time mode, when we don't need to preserve the persistent cache, we can use a geometry from the last frame directly rather than copying it. So this a bit of performance improvement when using the no cache option in the simulations, because you don't need to copy. You can just use whatever was in the previous frame. The node operators, the new option in Blender that you can run, it's an experimental option that you can run the operators, the geometry nodes as operators. So if you have a geometry nodes group for making an array, now you can run it as an operator and have these settings exposed. However, this is experimental because there's many things to be worked out yet. So you're gonna find it in the experimental new features node group operators next to the rotation socket. Next, well, the title of this show, new repeat zone, and let's a little applause here. This is great news. So let's get in the zone with the repeat zone. It's been a while I don't do this live stream, so let's do a live demo and break the planet here. Let's see, geometry nodes. There is a new node, well, a new zone in town. It's called the repeat zone, and it's not simulation. It is a utility. It is it? Yeah, it is a utility. I suggested this to the live some weeks ago and I forgot. All right, yes, utilities. Repeat zone. What does it mean? Well, a repeat zone, it's a region, an area that everything that happens here, similar to the simulation nodes, is going to... Oh, you don't see my mouse again. Something broke. Last time you could see it. Anyway, everything that happens in this area, you can actually... is going to repeat. So, for example, let's do an array. We were talking about an array. So let's have, for example, I'm going to have a geometry, right? Let's do a mesh primitive icosphere. So I have my icosphere and this is my output. Cool. So let's say I want to make an array of this. I would first make a move it, right? And this will create a copy of the position. And let's see if it works. So I'm moving it, yes. And then the result of this, I'm gonna copy it with, I'm gonna join it with the repeat, with the original geometry. So now actually if I just move, I am transforming this and I have an iterations option. And there you go. A little array modifier-ish thingy with 2 nodes. Nice. Okay, now I only need to add the rest of these options and simply we just need to start replacing these nodes, these modifiers with geometry nodes by now. Especially now that you apply it, it would apply it like a operator. Awesome. And then we could add features more easily. Isn't it that great? So repeat input and outputs is very, very simple. It's similar to the simulation zone, except that this is not a simulation. It doesn't run on every frame, as in doesn't depend on anything. Just like a closed parallel, not a parallel. It's a serial loop, one after the other. Awesome. Let's actually look. Let's look at the commit because I didn't read it yet. This adds support for running a set of nodes repeatedly. The number of iterations can be controlled dynamically as an input of the repeat zone. The repeat zone can be added via the search or the new utilities menu. Or the utilities menu. The main use case is to replace the long repetitive node change with a more flexible alternative. Technically, the repeat zones can also be used for many other use cases. However, due to their serial nature, performance is very suboptimal. Handle with care. When they are used to solve problems that could be processed in parallel. Yeah, so we still need parallel loops, but because this is the best thing we have at the moment, but it could potentially in the future we could have a big use case for parallel. Repeat zones are similar to simulation zones. The major difference is that they don't have no concept of time and are always evaluated entirely in the current frame, while in simulations only a single iteration is evaluated per frame. So again, performance. Stopping the repetition early using a dynamic condition is not yet supported. Break functionality can be implemented manually using the switch nodes in the loop for now. It is likely that this functionality will be built into the repeat zone in the future. For now, things are kept simple. To-dos: improve the socket inspection and the viewer node support. Currently, only the first iteration is taken into account. Next, make the loop evaluation more lazy. Currently, the evaluation is eager, so it tries to evaluate everything as soon as possible instead of lazy. It's not a bad thing usually in programming in this kind of setups. It means that it will only execute when needed instead of eager. Okay, and last but not least, in geometry nodes, the rotation socket now has a tooltip, so you can now actually see the values rotation, similar to you can see color and other. So when you leave the mouse over the socket, very nice, awesome. that is all for geometry node. Let's move. How's the chat? Are people still spamming? No? Cool. No more. I'm gonna leave it here then to the sides. Next, and internationalization. It's the next topic. They are, well, as always, updated translations. Updated translations. Some geometry node attributes are missing. Were missing translations, so now they have been updated. The multi-view stereo also was missing the extraction of the single message, and the light cache messages, they will be longer, more room for translations. You know, sometimes in what is in English a short phrase, in other languages it's going to be longer or shorter. I was amazed when I was in last week in China how they, with less characters, they can have so much more information that in Spanish we will have like a kilometer of text. It was so cool. And also all the work that Damian and Bastiani are doing, and all the translators, the community of translators are doing for Blender is so important. We tend to forget, and it's very easy to forget how many people, especially if you're watching this, it means that you understand a bit of English. How, like, the majority of people don't know English. That's the reality. So yeah, it's very important that we support localization, that we have our own manual translated too, and the community can support it as well, that Blender can be translated, and that everything in its multiple support, and especially for text objects. Let's continue. Library overrides. Generate more unique names for library overrides. What does it mean? Name collisions can become a big issue in library overrides when production files get messy. Weird override duplicates, bad resyncing with heavily changing assets, and so on. So this commit tries to alleviate a bit of the problem by generating more unique names for the library overrides when an exact match with the reference is not possible. Again, this is also other it's part of the fixes that are possible, mainly thanks to having the studio people here doing crazy weird setups and overrides and libraries and multiple characters. So thanks Blender Studio for testing this library override nightmare. And thank you, Bastian, for fixing it. Next, lights. Remove and use Blender internal property. Oh yeah, I left this one in because it's nostalgia. Remember Blender internal 2.7? About 5 years ago. 5 years ago? 2018, yeah. Yeah, so apparently there was still some code in Blender that was used only for Blender internal, like all of curve data that, yeah, it's no longer used, so it has been removed. Let's switch into mesh. The mesh merge by distance has been optimized. How much faster? Well, about 6% faster in the weld modifier, and also in an operator. I don't know if I included this commit, but yeah, the merge by distance now should be slightly faster most of the time, especially when the merging affects a large portion of the mesh. If it's not affecting, or if it's a small part of the mesh, it's actually going to be slower, slightly slower, 0.6 performance. But yeah, it's more common the case that you will use more, you will merge more parts. Fix missing multi-threading. So this is a fix that makes things faster. What is faster? Bmesh to mesh conversion. So 2 commits in the past added multi-threading, but a typo meant that it wasn't used for half of the process. Fixing that gives a 30% improvements from about 80 to 60 milliseconds when converting a grid. Okay, next. Mesh editing. 2 changes. Implement X symmetry in the propagate to shapes operator. Since the operator affects shape keys rather than current mesh coordinates, this only symmetrizes the selection, everything that is selected. And the same has been done for the blend from shape operator. This symmetrizes selection and vertex positions just like any other operator in the x-axis. Nice. User interface change. This is what I mentioned in the beginning of the show when I said that the nodes, well, in this case, nodes with a preview, which at the time of making this video, it only affects the compositing nodes. So yeah, the compositing nodes have a backdrop, but also have a preview under, well, not under, now on top of their nodes. This has been extended. So for example, if I have a, let's say if I have an image, this also will apply. So let's say I have an image here with I have a texture here and I combine these two. I gonna see the thumbnail in a very low resolution, I guess for performance, but there is a little preview that comes with the node, and it actually, when makes all the nodes of the same height, it doesn't affect the UI, doesn't jump anymore when you activate or deactivate the preview, which you can do by the way with Shift H. This hasn't changed, and you can enable it on a per node basis, and you can also disable it globally via the overlay, because it's now an overlay. So you go to the overlay options, previews, and this will toggle the preview. Nice. Now we just need this for cycles or for textures or anything else. So nice. I mean, in this case, there is nothing new. Is that the thing that is new is that there are no new previews added. The preview has been moved to an overlay. So also, if you have this, for example, inside of a, it's gonna make your interface smaller, and you can disable it as an overlay, which is good. And I mean interface as in they are not part of a frame, for example. They stick out. And they are like in the same way that in geometry nodes we have timings. It's the same concept. So it's gonna be in the future, if we have timings for compositing, for example, it's gonna be timing and then the image. Okay, what else? What else? Real-time compositor. I'm losing my voice, but we are in the letter R. Good, we are moving forward. Real-time compositor. Implement the classic Kuwahara filter. This patch implements the classic Kuwahara node for the real-time compositor. In an implementation is used for the radii. Thank you for helping me spell and pronounce this word correctly in the last episode, radii, or radii, up to 5 pixels. And a constant implementation based on the sum area tables is used for higher radii. Now I forgot. At the cost of building and storing the tables. So why? Because this will make it closer between CPU and GPU. This is actually related to the comment that I was mentioning before, that CPU implementation has changed, and now they should be closer, CPU and GPU together. Nice. What else is nice? Remove C buffer from image buffer. Well, have you ever done any compositing and seen the Z output in the viewer and the composite node and you were confused? This is actually very old. This is from the times of Iris images. It was only used for Iris and for OpenEXR, and saving the C buffer in those formats was disabled by default anyway, so now this has been removed. This option comes from the times prior to the addition of the multi-layer EXR, where you can actually specify your outputs. Radii. Thank you, Tetrapixel Dominius, Dev Summoner et al. Radii. Okay. Next, shape key editing. More shape key editing. Propagate updates through basis chains. Let's see, what is it? Oh, yeah, because a shape key can have a basis that is not the basis. Can have another shape key. So it basically is like a tree. It is possible to organize shape keys into a tree through the reference key setting. Mesh editing and sculpting a reference key is supposed to update all its children, but it was only done for the one level dependencies. So it is possible to organize shape keys into a tree through the reference key setting. Okay, dangerous commit log, because it starts saying that it is possible to organize shape keys into a tree, making it look like, what? We can now have trees in the shape keys list, but I don't think that's the case, because, well, I hope so, but I mean, in the future, this could be. No, because otherwise I should be able to move these things. And if I use the basis key 1, okay, no. But this key 2 now is relative to key 1. So maybe in the future it could draw like a tree in the same way that the new Grease Pencil draws like a tree. That would actually be pretty cool. And we have the tech for that now. We have the technology available. So nice. It would help with the visualizing a lot. And it means that you could change the basis just by drag and dropping too, if you want. Interesting. Next, transform support navigation from end-of devices. This commit implements the operators to the navigation utilities so that these operations can be used in the transform operators. Nice. Let's, ooh, nice. 3D text selection. This was very much broken apparently, and now it works. So selection has been improved in 3D text. You can now click anywhere and select text, click, select, drag, and also it adds. So this is the old behavior and this is the new behavior. So you can start typing anywhere on the list, click, select, drag, regardless of the zoom, add text anywhere, and it will work. So what was the difference? Oh yeah, it was like you can see how broken it is. You couldn't go up. There was some, yeah, okay. So broken and broken. Thank you, Guillermo, for working on this. Super nice. Julian Isel. Add hierarchy lines for tree views. This is what we saw before in the Grease Pencil tree. That is slightly off. So I should tell Julian, but he wasn't feeling well in the last few days, so I'm not gonna pester him with such a nitpicky. Thank you for working on this. Next change. Oh, this is actually a patch from the community that makes at a glance much easier to see which shape keys are active or like are enabled or not. So this is how it used to look. If you don't see, actually, yeah, you don't see my cursor, but I'm pointing to here. Yeah, so the last shape key, for example, is disabled, but the name is still visible. Not anymore. Now the whole row will be disabled. Well, it will be grayed out, not disabled. So you can still click and you can still do everything, but it's just the whole thing is much more clear to see what is enabled and disabled. So before, after. Nice. Improve region resize edge detection for transparent regions. So there were transparent regions that, okay, so this is an improvement or more like a fix. For overlapping regions, we currently use the offset the edge for resizing regions a bit towards the content. This makes sense, for example, in the sidebar where the region background is fully transparent. Although the region overlaps, we decided to make it fully opaque by default. The offset is still applied, making the edge detection feel broken. Oh yeah, because we are dragging an area that is not visible. So, nice to see. Basic tree view, drag and drop, reordering and inserting support. This is already what I demoed before when talking about Grease Pencil, drag and dropping from items into group layers, layer groups. Add progress indicator variations in... Oh yeah, new progress bar. I mentioned this before. These are the new progress bars. So in Python now, in your add-ons, for example, you can include the, or in Blender itself, Blender can also now have two types of progress bars. One is the regular bar, the one that Blender has for everything, has the one type, and now it has a new type, which is circular, which is so much nicer for small spaces when it doesn't make, it should use about the size of an icon, I think. So yeah, very welcome. Next change, SVG thumbnails. Yes, SVG files now have thumbnails as shown here. And in this demo, actually in this example, it doesn't, oh yeah, somebody suggested it in the, in right click select a month ago. See, right click select is checked by developers. They make pull requests and people work on it. So nice. Thank you for making the right click select proposal, and thanks to Harley for working on it. Nice. And actually on a commit right after, the SVG thumbnails were added checkerboard backgrounds, just like other thumbnails. Yeah, apparently the progress bar that I just mentioned had two types. One, the circular had two types, pie and ring. And I agree that it doesn't make sense to have multiple types of progress bars when they occupy the same space and they have the same meaning. Yeah, I agree. Like a bar and a pie or a circular makes sense, but not a circular with a ring and a circular with a pie. A pie will work on a smaller size, but even then, there's one type. Refactor the calculation for the grid view visible items optimization. No user visible changes. Previously, the calculation to skip the building, the layout for invisible items used the scrolling offsets quite a bit. And this is now optimized. And last but not least, in the user interface, a huge addition to a small widget. So ever have the case of okay, here for example, we well, this is not a checkbox per se, but if I have a, for example, if I have a tree where some of the options are disabled and the top one is enabled, there is a, this is a bit confusing, right? Because here, when this is minimized, I can see that this collection is enabled, and I assume that everything inside is enabled, but no, actually there is a third state, which is when things under the tree are enabled or disabled. So the top one should have like a third state. It's not off, on, it's intermediate. And that concept, not for these icons, these are icons, has been added to the checkboxes. So now checkboxes can have a third item, or actually any value can have a third state, which is 0, 1, or multiple. Is this being used already? If I mean, I select two objects. No, it shows the active. That's correct. I don't think it's being used anywhere yet, but it but it will be used, because it makes sense when you have checkboxes that have, yeah, that what I mentioned, that they need a third state. What else? We have a few more options, a few more sections. One, USD, improved light unit conversion. Use the pi factor to convert between radiant flux and intensity. Mark lights as normalized when exporting USD. Spotlight export support, add 3 test point support for import and export, empirically match normalized distant light, and fix the wrong unnormalized point sphere disk light units in cycles. Nice. Overall, it should be much closer now for all the light types. Point and distant lights units are inconsistent between the renderers, so not possible to match everything here. That is pretty cool. Ray made another commit. USD. BFUSD is a bit slow to build. So this is a building issue. And most of the time is spent on the front end on the compiler parsing USD headers. So this should be, it's a bit faster to compile Blender with USD now. The other change that is actually affecting end users working with USD is the more complete import and export of lights. What does it mean? It means that exposure importing, diffuse factor support, correct disk radius, better non-normalized intensity importing, and sun radius export now should be all included when importing and exporting USD lights in USD files. Nice. UB, letter U, and we're approaching the end. U for USD before and U for UB now. Add invert pins to the menu in the UV editor. Invert pins. So there was a little discussion going on here because the commit says add invert pins, but it doesn't explain. It says thanks to someone from the community, but it doesn't explain why is it useful. And I think we should always try to include why something is useful, what is the rationale. Include maybe artists in the module or an example file, or how it's named or used in other software, for example. So in this case, it was requested why this is useful, and then the community and developers got together and explained a bit of why this would be useful. But yeah, it's nice when there is this kind of discussions. And here there is a discussion, although this should be added to the PR details though. Anyway, next, V for VSE. Two changes. One, optimize cache linking. Nice. Allows to remove checks before calling the function, making it faster, and makes it possible to assert, so check for an error or stop on an error, that links are actually pointing where they should be. And this one is huge if you have multiple cores, because audio strip waveforms are now going to be calculated in parallel. So if you have 1,000 audio strips with 1,000 waveforms waiting to be calculated, and you have 1,000 cores, it's all gonna be immediate, because this work is gonna be split into little tasks that can be taken like tuk 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 pulled by any of the cores on your system. Awesome. Lucas Tadeo. I don't think I have seen comments by you. Thank you, Lucas, for working on this. Oh, from a Google Summer of Code 2023. Nice. Thank you, Lucas. So happy to see this work making it from the Google Summer of Code into the into Blender already. Summer is not even over. And that's it. That is the last change that I have to talk about this week. How are we with time? 1 hour 15? 1 hour? How long is the stream so far? Is it okay? How's the chat? Okay, we still have some spam. 4i7, is it good? Yeah, it is good. Let's look at the tabs in my system. It's like, let me try to close some of this, and I will close this, and maybe I can do this without showing my screen, so it's not gonna flash on your face. Sorry about that. Let's see if I can get to some questions before the end of the show. Let's do five questions in this thread. Now I close all my windows. Let's see. How many comments are there? 17 comments. Let's read the ones that have more comments. Although, let's see if it's not written by a bot. So, why Pablo not Blender apps? AI not for Blender. This account. This was made 3:55 p.m. today. And this 3:45 p.m. today. So clearly a bot. Let's skip the AI and go to Waffle. What does Waffle has to say here? You didn't have bots, please. Thank you. You didn't have a farm of bots either. I was wondering, I haven't really read or seen any news about the procedural texturing. Oh, by the way, hi Pablo, hope you're doing well. Thank you. Waffle, hope you too. I haven't really read or seen any news about the procedural texturing project that was announced at the start of last year. It is still in the works, or is something that was pushed aside for the meantime? It will be awesome if Blender will become a viable alternative. I think we all agree on this. Unfortunately, if you remember, that project was on Brecht's and Sergey's desk, people that are also involved with cycles, with the dependency graph, with many other areas, and now they're working on the compositor or even USD. So I think the project is unfortunately not gonna be for Blender 4.0 for sure, because otherwise we would see things already. But they're also working on light linking, which was another priority. Unfortunately, we don't have enough people, and the people that are working on some areas of Blender has to stop working on that area to focus on other areas. So yeah, unfortunately, yeah, it is part of the process. Like the goal of Blender is to be the 3D suite, right? And everybody agrees that procedural texturing, painting, it's part of that process. Next question, is there any news about 3D texture painting performance? Unfortunately, it remains an area in Blender where a lot is left to be desired regarding performance. I know. An improved performance would allow Blender to become a very valid alternative. Yes, everybody agrees. Especially if this is down the line, could be integrated together with the procedural texturing. I think it is very related. Some improvements are gonna happen on that regard. I think the asset shelf going to help moving a bit of the asset brush management, and it's kind of related to that project. But yeah, no, I wouldn't hold my breath. Unfortunately, we have a army of artists downstairs that are also dying for this improvement in Blender. But yeah, unfortunately, as I said, we have a small team, and let's plug the one thing that keeps Blender, well, one of the many things that keeps Blender afloat, but has been going down a lot. If you check live streams where I go to this website, 3,260 something was the last time I checked, and now it's 60 less individuals, plus a few less corporate. But yeah, unfortunately, these numbers are not going up. It is tough time for a lot of people, so it's understandable. But if you spent some money on add-ons lately, maybe consider Blender this huge add-on that is required for all your other add-ons to work. So maybe consider giving a little bit of support to the Blender Development Fund if you haven't already. You can also have one-time donations, of course, but the recurring donations are something that help to plan into the future. Okay, next. I read a comment today, was like, I already spent $70 on add-ons this week. Like, one person spent $70 in add-ons in 1 week. In 1 week. Imagine. Have that, like, Maybe we could do like the Blender birthday, the 2nd of January, a Blender, like donate to Blender day, that everybody says like, hey, you know, I'm gonna give $5 if or something like that. Just like a one-time donation, or maybe bigger, one-time donation. You know, it's between New Year's and the Chinese New Year. After, you know, we are still in festive times, maybe that would be something to do, like a one-time donation, like the Wikipedia one, without the sad person in the banner. Okay. Next question, number 2. Hola Pablo, missed the streams. Hope you're well. Thank you. Hope you're also well. It's been a few weeks now, but congrats to the Blender team on the latest release. Not really a development question this week, but I noticed that the new donate now call to action on the download page. I thought it was a great idea and an obtrusive way of prompting people to consider contributing. I was wondering if you noticed an increase in development fund donations as a result of it. Actually, donate now. Yeah, actually, so when you download Blender, there is a something that we are testing, which is like donate once before while you're waiting for Blender to download. We're testing this. You can change the amount to be anything, right? You can do any donation, and we're testing this. But because we changed this, actually the development fund has been going down because we used to have a message here for that. So we still have to check if this is worth the problem or not. Also, there are parts of the world where this doesn't really work that well, so we need to have some way to target other parts. But it's a test. We're testing. We need to check. You know, tests take time. But yeah, thank you. What I noticed is a decrease on this because arguably, well, you don't see it, but I'm clicking here in the number of individuals because we are not promoting it as much. Although in the build bot, I added this message, so I hope maybe some people are gonna get the memo here. By the way, I didn't mention, but Blender 3.6.1 LTS has been the first fix of the LTS release has been added. Has been released. I forgot to mention. And also 3.3.9, another LTS release. I forgot to mention that in the live stream. Sorry, in the beginning of the live stream. Okay. Next, that was the third question. Hi Pablo, welcome back. The live streams were missed. I also missed the live stream. I won't forget how to talk. I was wondering if there's any news on the bevel node that was showcased at the Blender conference. I know it's been in the works for a while, but wondered if maybe it might make a Blender 4.0 debut. I know, right? At the Blender conference, we had many promises, and unfortunately, the people that are working on that they're not working for Blender. It's like on their own time. They have their own jobs, their own lives. So we can't do anything but hope that they find some time to contribute to that into the Blender code. They have contributed in the past. All of the bevel code they have contributed is in Blender already, so they have a proven record of contributions. But unfortunately, it's not people that are under the payroll of Blender, and it's not that's something that Blender can control, unfortunately. So we can only hope and maybe go to the patch. Maybe if there hasn't been anything new in 6 months, can be like, hey, I tested this, it works great, how can I help? You know, like try to revive these threads in a positive way. We still have a long time. We still have like 1 month of Beacon 1, almost a month of Beacon 1, and then we have Beacon 2 where we could have some more 4.0 news, big news. Okay, so this was the 1, 2, 3. Let's go with the 4th. Although this doesn't have any commits, I should actually be fair, start from the bottom because these are added by time, right? So nab. Oi Pablo, it's been a while. Is there a way or a plan to enable stacked normalized curves. I've been learning some animation and my teacher for it uses this in his program to massively reduce the spaghetti. Oh wow, yeah, this would be great. It's I don't know if they have plans. You can check the code blog, but this looks so useful. Absolutely. Like yeah, as a visualization tool. I don't know if there is anything planned, but we can ask the animation module. You can go to projects.blender.org, modules, animation and rigging, and there you can maybe ask anybody of this, or in the animation module chat, although this is for developers, but maybe in the forum. Mailing list. By the way, the mailing list have been sunset. There's no more mailing list. Now everything happens in developer.blender.org. Sorry, in devtalk.blender.org. So everybody, all the modules should update this. I should add a reminder to the mailing list. No, how do I send a reminder? Well, to Blender coders. Next, I do have a few other quick questions. Now that it's 3.6, and therefore HipRT is in the LTS. When can we expect open data HipRT test files? Why? Oh, the benchmark, you mean? Any news on physics is? A good question. I don't know. Is it? I mean, I think in open data, opendata.blender.org, the search, I think you can filter by hip. So it's just maybe a matter of well, I don't know if this counts as a separate thing. I think it's just hip, and you probably can tell the difference with and without RT, probably, because it's pretty big. But I don't know if it's gonna show up. I need to ask the people if this is gonna show up. Maybe you can enter the chat and ask, but I don't know if it's gonna show up as a separate compute type. Any news on physics systems? Nope. I noticed there is still no bevel node in geometry nodes. No, I also don't know. But was there any plans on adding a bevel node? Or something to ask in the everything nodes channel on Blender chat. And the last question. Good evening, Pablo. Glad to see you back. Thank you. Glad to see you back. Could you please enlighten us the status of library overrides? Any progress on dynamic overrides? So the status of library overrides, if you actually look at this thread that I just made and search for library overrides, wait, why is in there? Because it was a huge list of changes in library overrides. Overrides. Leave overrides, maybe. Yeah, leave override. Here, this huge list of changes. So the status of library overrides is alive, and dynamic overrides, I don't think it's in the plans at the moment, because it is a huge progress, a huge project, and I don't think it's yet in the plans, unfortunately. And the last, maybe because it's right here. Hello, Pablo. I really like the shows. I'm happy to have a conference ticket. By the way, yes, conference.blender.org. Tickets are available. There are same amount as last year. So remember, last year sold out in a month, 2 months, or something like that. So if you plan to go, maybe get your ticket before it's too late. Yeah, that's it. That's mainly it. And get a conference ticket. There is a 3-day conference ticket and a 1-day pass. You can also click here and get the full ticket. 365 euros. It's not cheap, for sure. Although compared to other conferences, it's actually on the cheap side. Some conferences are much more than that. Remember, this 3 days of the conference, 2 dinners are included, drinks on there are open bars, there is unlimited coffee and cookies and lunch. So you also get lunch. Actually, we don't mention this, but there is lunch and food and all the time. So if you just stay at the conference, you can actually not pay for food in Amsterdam, which is very expensive. So on one side, it is expensive. On the other side, if you count eating out in Amsterdam, it's not that expensive, you know. But anyway, yeah, it's not. Unfortunately, Blender is not making any money with this, by the way. It's actually losing. It's an investment that Blender does. But, you know, in exchange, we get a nice series of talks that everybody can see on YouTube on videos.blender.org afterwards. Can I ask if there is still things in motion for Blender XR? I know Pepeland has been working on that, Daniel Martinez Lara. And also for the Blender Lab. I don't think there are news on Blender Lab. I need to ask Ton. But Blender, but any news there will be shared. I don't think there's anything at the moment. Otherwise, let's call it a day, I think, because it has been 2 weeks without doing the live stream. And because why I wasn't here, because I was actually very far away from here. I was in China, and I was invited by the Communication University of China to give a workshop there, and I thought it would be a great opportunity to go there because first, I haven't been there, never, but I don't think anybody from the Blender team, as in or developers, we have developers there. We have Yiming Wu from Line Art there, who I met in person. It was awesome. But it was amazing. I can only say good things about the community over there. The amount of the impact that Blender has over there, it's really huge. I also met people from not only Blender CN, Blender China, but also from Blender Magic. I had to come back with another suitcase full of gifts and appreciations and Blender logos and Blender gear everywhere. It's amazing, and it really was really eye-opening. Personally, I plan to give a small presentation here at the studio to the rest of the team to discuss and to give emphasis to the impact that Blender has in everywhere in the world. How important it is to have localization, to have Blender supported in other languages, the Blender manual in other languages, Blender input text in other languages. We tend to forget that most of the people in the world actually use other alphabets. They don't use the regular, the one that we ship Blender with by default, you know, and it's important to support that. Payment options, for example, people in other countries, they use other apps. They can't use PayPal, so it's important. And the most important for me, it was also the access. In China, I'm not sharing anything new here, but in China, I couldn't access Instagram, Facebook, Google Maps, Google Docs, like all my work I couldn't access without VPN. So Google Docs, Google Maps, everything was blocked except Blender. YouTube, I couldn't access YouTube but I could access videos.blender.org. And that is not only China where this happens. This could happen anywhere, that you get blocked to some specific websites in particular. So and GitHub, I couldn't access GitHub. You have to use a VPN to access it. So even imagine if Blender was on GitHub, if you're blocking a bunch of people just because. So it was really reassuring for me to see the impact that Blender has. The only thing that I could use there, that I knew there, because all the other websites are in Chinese or they're like different, right? The only website and the only thing I had in common with the people there was Blender. And I was like, damn, it really, you know, at Blender sometimes we have these headaches because we try to do everything open source, right? We use Git instead of GitHub. We have the videos.blender.org for our own video platform for uploading the Blender conference and these live streams as well. But we rely so much still in some other services that it is worth sharing, and it is worth putting the extra effort to make everything decentralized and open source as much as possible. So yeah, really eye-opening. I will close it in this happy note. Also, the people there are so sweet, so nice. I loved it. I am looking forward to go back even next year, even hopefully with more to share, and maybe other places to see where the Blender community is. Where should I go next? Where we should go? Actually, the next thing we're going is in 2 weeks. We're going to the US of A, US to SIGGRAPH, actually, on not this week, at the end of next week, actually. At the end of next week, we're going to Los Angeles for SIGGRAPH. We're gonna be there for 1 week. The big part of the Blender team is gonna be there. So yeah, there won't be a live stream in next week, yes, but not the week after. Again, sorry, but because of SIGGRAPH. But there will be the week after. And I wonder how happy will be the US will be that I've been to China 2 weeks ago, 1 week, last week. All right, let's get over with this live stream and let's meet again. How about next week? How about same time? Definitely. Same place for sure, for this weekly show, mostly weekly, that we call Blender Today. Watch your ear holes. Thanks everyone again. Thank you for your patience. Sorry for the messages that I couldn't read. I hope you understand. Let's meet again next week, same place and time, for another Blender Today live. Bye.